Hi, everyone. We have a special edition coming out of Sarathi today for all of you guys. And I have Richa Bansal, the CEO and founder of Sarathi. And Richa, what we hear is 7 years. You're nearing 7 years of Sarathi. And first of all, a big congratulations is in order. And, I want you to recapitulate the journey for all of us, starting from why you started working with the blind.
Well, I think 7 years, it just doesn't seem real. It just seems like yesterday when we started. And I think a lot of people actually wonder why we chose to work with the blind.
Yes.
Because mostly, even today, I think some of the largest organizations still struggle to figure out how to get started with them. Well, I think I would say, as luck would have it, my first exposure of even working with persons with disabilities was with the blind. And I think while I was in Vodafone and when I started working with the blind, it just came so naturally to me to acquire a deeper understanding of how they operate, what they need as an accommodation and
Right.
assistance to drive better output. I think there was a certain level of intrigue that I had. I
Mhm.
was inquisitive, I was curious, and equally in awe of how were they managing it all. And somehow I kind of built a relationship with the organization that was supporting us with this entire thing. And they were kind enough to induct me into the entire practice of how persons with vision impairment work. And that is how I think I started working with the blind because that was my comfort zone, so to say.
Uh-huh. Well, we all have our comfort zones, I must confess. So, when you started a BPO, a business process outsourcing unit, and you were largely employing the visually impaired and the blind as we spoke, how was business acquisition in the initial years?
Oh my God. Now, when I look back, I think it was the most challenging. The toughest thing for us was to even let the world know that, hey, we are not an NGO. We are here to deliver business value for what you are estimating to do. But I think initially it was more about show and tell. It was more about getting their confidence. So
Mhm.
I still remember one of the first few clients that we managed to get. I think what took a huge amount of effort from our side was one, I think the conviction that we could do it. Second, the conviction of the team that we had who gave us the confidence. Don't worry, we are here. We are going to go out there and do anything that's possible.
Mhm.
And thirdly, to let the client know if it fails, don't worry. We'll be the first ones to raise our hands and say, it's okay. You can pull your work back from us. I think this level of conviction,
Mhm.
this level of commitment is what we went in with. And that is what gave the clients the confidence that we could do it and the fact that we meant business. It was not anything else.
So obviously that's a lot of faith put into you by the business owners, And I mean, you were coming with a place of knowing, confidence. Of course, you had your exposure to vision impairment, but for somebody who was a completely, let's say, new initiate into
Yeah.
this whole thing, what was their experience, and how did it progress? And when while you answer that, tell me also about the industries that the clients across the industries.
So I think the first very obvious client that we worked with was the social sector. I was recently moving, I was just about moving out from Cry into doing Sarathi, into setting up Sarathi. And the last exposure that I had with respect to a call center was a fundraising experience. And that is what kind of encouraged me to have a conversation with these NGOs that they could possibly give their fundraising initiative to us, and we
Mhm.
did that. Fundraising is a very tough thing, and I'm sure Shruti, you would be aware of that. And when you're doing a telephonic fundraise, it is even more difficult. So I think within the first 6 months of starting out, I realized that we could not set our team up for failure
Of course.
because we were not looking at any conversions. There was a conscious call that we took that we are not going to continue doing fundraising. because we were not able to deliver and get anything out of it. Having said that, it was equally important to get something else at that time. And I think Amazon was our first client. But Amazon also, you'll be surprised, Shruti, that it was not something which was suddenly they came in and they said, okay, we are going to give you 5 seats and this is the kind of money we'll give you. No. And I respect them for who they are because they chose to work with us as an equal opportunity channel partner. They gave us the work of bringing in more partners, e-commerce partners on the platform, and it was a tough one. So e-commerce essentially after fundraising was the first major industry that we got started with. And in on the hindsight, I would say it was a good starting point because it was a very complex space that we started work in.
Of course. Okay.
That tested us across on all levels. Not
Mhm.
only tested our patience by when will we start earning, but also tested us with respect to what we could deliver to the client. How do we get their confidence? So I think Amazon was a great starting point for us from that point of view. And then after that, we started working with a lot of new age startups.
Mhm.
EdTech was just kind of picking up at that time.
Yeah.
And so
And I'm
EdTech
just like mentioning here, it's around 2008, 9, you're talking. 18,
2000,
18,
2019 beginning,
19.
because 2018 is when we started. 2019 beginning is when we onboarded two clients together. One was Coding Ninjas, in the EdTech space. And then we also started working with Cashify. And so while Cashify was out and out service, here was Coding Ninjas, which was out and out sales. So we
Mhm.
started developing our deeper understanding of both these kind of processes together. So it was a lot of fun, different, but it gave us a very holistic experience of what we wanted to build eventually.
While you say that, and I just want to clarify that the fundraising thing was generally a hard function, and it's got nothing to do with being, working with persons with disabilities. Just want
Not
to
at
put
all,
that
not
out
at
there.
all,
Yeah.
not at all.
So, while you say that, you also must have had your learnings working with the visually impaired. That must have also progressed by and by. What? Share something with us. What are your biggest hits? What were your biggest misses? Anything?
I think I'll first talk about the learnings. I thought I knew what it takes to work with persons with vision impairment. But oh my God, so much I learned while I was working with them day in and day out. And this is my favorite anecdote to share with people, and I will share it. So there is this boy who works with us, Rafsan, and our from our office, the washroom is just behind, and people just kind of, and especially people with vision impairment, once they get used to their surrounding, it's very comfortable for them to kind of navigate their way to close by areas. So one fine day, I was walking back from the washroom towards the office, and I see Rafsan walking towards the washroom.
Mm.
And he's walking and he's very happily snapping his fingers. And he goes and then he comes back and he's again snapping his fingers in a very rhythmic manner. And I'm like deeply confused as well as curious. I'm like, what is wrong with him? Why is he constantly snapping his fingers? And I'm the kind of person who doesn't hesitate in asking questions. So I come back to office and I call him in. I said, Afsan, why were you snapping your fingers? I mean, I didn't even notice that you were singing or anything, that it was going with some flow. So he's like, no, ma'am, I was just snapping my fingers
Mm.
because, when people don't know I am blind. So they
Yeah.
are mostly in their phone. What if they bump into me? So this is my way of letting them know that I'm coming. And that was something which was an eye opener for me, that, life has to be so much more intuitive for them. It's We keep talking about accommodations, we keep talking about assistive technology and tools. Look, at
Mm.
the end of the day, I think human beings are beautifully created so that we can function in a very intuitive manner. We are very innovative intrinsically, we are very creative by nature. And to that an extent, I found it very creative. And that also therefore gave me an understanding of we are different but yet so alike. It's about survival of the fittest. How do you want to survive in a environment, in an ecosystem which
Right.
perhaps is not necessarily very conducive for you? You find your way out. So I think from a learning point of view, these are the things that I learned over the course of time. Yeah.
Right. I think I'd like to add here that this is what probably companies are missing out at looking at. Disability comes across in our mindset, and our society has to have a great way to evolve. And still, it's very slow. It's progressing well, though, I must say. The last 10 years, a lot of things have changed. So it's about this not seeing disability as a barrier, as an impediment, but actually all persons with disabilities are great innovators, and that's been my experience in the last 9 or 10 years. They come up with solutions that probably not even fall into the strict bracket of what you said, reasonable accommodation.
Totally.
These are accommodations that even you and I probably work out at in our workplace every day,
Absolutely.
just that
And
we are not classified as persons with disabilities.
in
Every
fact,
each
just
one of us does.
just to add to that, the other thing, I think most corporates shy away from either having conversations, and second, the fine line between sympathy and empathy. Uh,
Right.
I think a lot of persons with disabilities, I've realized now that I've worked so closely with them since last 7 years, they are happily accepting of their disability. You know,
Right.
they, I mean, they are not, they're not sulking about it. They are happily living their lives, acknowledging that disability is just a part of it. But what I realized in these 7 years was that these are people who learn to live happily by enjoying those small little things. Even if, like, I still remember, I used to be very conscious of using the word because I was working with people with vision impairment. Are yaar usko dekh lo na. How in a
Right.
regular way when we talk, that you have just created a report while the person is going to access the report on the laptop on a screen, but you have a very regular way of saying, why haven't you seen the report yet?
Right.
The way the word used, the seen word is being used. I used to be very conscious of using these words earlier.
Hmm.
But now I think I have gained a very different perspective on it.
Right.
And today, my comfort level in being able to use these words consciously and even subconsciously is okay, because I don't feel guilty of it, because I know where persons with disabilities are coming from. And I equally know that they are not looking at me differently just because I've chosen to use this word.
That's where the normalization is missing, right? Because we are too conscious from including them, and they are too conscious from stepping into our world. So that
Ex-
divide is what is, missing normalization. And I think terminology sometimes taken too seriously is
yeah,
becoming a deterrent for companies
yeah.
also.
Absolutely.
You
I
know,
couldn't agree
so,
more.
you've progressed. 7 years is a long time,
Right.
and you
Absolutely.
started working with vision impairment, but you also tried in your hands at other disabilities. Just share some examples from there.
So I think over the last 7 years, one, we were working out of a single place first. So everybody
Mhm.
used to come to office. There was a deeper connect. We would know each and every person's personal life and history.
Right.
Where are they coming from? What are the challenges? Is it
Mhm.
a late disability? Is it an early stage disability? What is the reason of disability? Everything we would know. And because you were in the same physical space, you would land up bonding at a very different level, right? I
Right.
think in the course of last 4 years specifically, 4, 5 years specifically, life has changed drastically because work from home made a lot of difference. While it added a huge amount of opportunities for persons with different disabilities, we can't take away the fact that our level of connect and understanding of individuals hasn't perhaps remained what it used to be, right? So, based on different kinds of roles and various kind of jobs that were being created, I think we started including diverse disabilities into the ecosystem. The first few that we went for beyond vision impairment were people with hearing and speech impairment. We went in for people with muscle dystrophy, and gradually we started including others like blood disorder, people with multiple sclerosis, people with dwarfism, and people with autism, and even people with bipolar. Now, while we expanded the entire scope of disabilities that we were including, every person with disability has a unique story, I believe, right?
Mhm.
And till such time you don't know the unique story, nor can you connect and understand the person, nor can you be in a position to offer the accommodations required by the person, and nor will you be empathetic towards that person while the person is delivering a job or is not able to deliver the job,
Or
right?
utilize their potential for that
Or
matter.
utilize their
Yeah.
potential equally.
Yeah.
Now, uh, because all of these are individuals, I think in the last 7 years, some beautiful stories have come forth,
Hmm.
right? I recently was meeting a group of new set of people who just joined the company. And this girl who has recently joined, she met with an accident about 4 years back, and she lost to both her hands, elbow down. And she was so chirpy. I can't tell you, Shruti, when I met with her, because हमारे साथ क्या होता है, the moment we say that this person is an OH category. Now,
Mhm.
OH becomes a block for us. But within OH, just imagine what are the kind of stories that exist, and especially for a late stage disabled person. So here was a girl who lost both her, hands, elbow down, and she said that I used to be great at typing, and she has lost everything with respect to her speed, her efficiency, and everything. And the way she came and she said her confidence was supreme, that now I have learned how to type with my elbows, right? And I was extremely happy to meet with her because her positivity and her energy was infectious to a different level. And I think
Right.
these are the things that I have learned
Yeah.
more about the disability, about individual stories, which are far more important than anything else. And of course, from a disability point of view, we've discovered and made an effort to know more about each one as and when we've included one.
Right. And I think adversity brings out the best in us,
Oh,
so
absolutely.
that's where we,
Yeah, yeah,
as humans, are all the same. You
totally.
know, um, so you've progressed, like we said, and you're a business owner. You're obviously very upfront in saying, I'm in it for business. This is
Yeah,
not a problem that I'm trying to solve through charity. I am
correct.
the nonprofit. You have clearly differentiated your stance as Sarathi. Now, as a business owner, you must have had some learnings which are productive, profitable, efficiency, which fall in that bracket, right? And then you decided that, okay, this is knowledge that can be transferred to other businesses. And that's where you came up with a new idea. Tell us about that.
Well, I think within the very first 3.5 years, our BPO business reached a stage. Not only was it turning profitable, decently profitable, sustainable, growing, and also our exposure to diverse sectors had already been established. And we were extremely excited to bring in new industries into the overall business that we had established.
Mhm.
I think what we started to experience was that a lot of companies whom we were working with or whom we were servicing, there were conversations on the side that started taking place. Hey, you have done it. We've been struggling to do it. Is there something you can help us with? I think those corridor conversations like these started resulting into slightly more deeper, conversations where they would perhaps share their problem statement, and we, based on our
Right.
experience, would guide them. Then we said that while this is happening, is
Mhm.
there merit in understanding where the gap exists? Is
Mhm.
there merit to look at what we could support them with? And in all honesty, Shruti, when we started Sarathi, our vision was very, very clear. We wanted to build a sustainable business practice to be able to provide livelihood only for persons with disabilities. And that's the reason why, even today, more than 90% of our workforce are persons with disabilities.
Right.
One way of looking at building and continue to create that impact was that we could continue to scale our BPO operations.
Right.
You know, uh, And the other was that we amplify the impact by bringing other corporates into the overall ecosystem
Mhm.
and help them achieve their vision of inclusion. Because, we could only take that needle from this to this. But if there were others who would join the forces with us, the impact would be so much more. And that is when it struck us that how about if we actually start to build capacities with the corporates, help them learn through our experience of what it took us to move the needle for ourselves and how we can navigate their journey. So that's how ITP started. Yeah.
So for our audiences, ITP is Inclusion Transformation
Inclusion transfer. Yeah.
Platform, and Sarathi offers several services through it. And I think in the video, in the comments, you can see the website link. Please go and explore this. So, Richa, we talked about your learnings. We talked about some of the things that you turn around and say, okay, I'm wiser now. Think of let's also end this chat on a little heartwarming note and tell us some of the best moments, with it could be with your clients, it could be with your employees.
Okay. So I think I have deeper connect with my employees. So I will share some of my personal favorite moments that have stayed with me. So I remember I have, of course, seen a lot of weddings taking place within Sarathi. I have seen a lot of bachas within Sarathi. I have seen so much progress that has taken place of individuals within Sarathi.
Right.
I remember there was this couple who was working with us, Vimal and Guria, and they were both, one of them was working in a Cashify process and the other was in Amazon. And they got married and, they were just kind of building up their home, their family. And there was a lot of incentive we used to give. And Amazon was a client, of course. So they put their savings together. And I still remember they got their first refrigerator delivered in office.
Oh,
And that to me, I think it still brings so much joy and tears in my eyes. It was so beautiful.
right.
And apart from that, there are just so many people who come back and tell us about things that they have managed to achieve. Like Paramveer, he worked with us for a good 5 years and he managed to get his sister married
Mm.
because of the savings he created. And of course, Aarti gave him a part loan to that amount. But the joy of being able to fulfill a responsibility that nobody could perhaps expect from you is a
Right.
great joy. And that you can see on people's faces, that there is so much joy in them. There are people who have apart from these family things, people who have progressed in life, so Nitesh, someone I'm dearly fond of and I'm so proud of him, he joined us when he was just about
Mm.
entering graduation. And not only did he finish his graduation, he did his MBA while he was working with Sarathi. Not only that, he did a Six Sigma, course as well, and then he went on to do a coding program course, and all of this through his own initiative, and he moved on from an entry level job role to a senior project coordinator. He is someone who comes from a very humble background in Bihar, first time learner. And today, I'm so proud he's moved out of Sarathi and is working with SBI and supporting his family so beautifully. And these are the kind of stories which give me immense joy. People who've managed to buy a car for themselves, who've created enough savings to give their
Fire things, yeah.
parents the confidence that there is so much that they've managed to achieve.
See,
So yeah, I
I think each
have,
one of us, even I remember, like, my first paycheck and, the first set of jewelry I bought for my mother, she was extremely happy
yeah,
and proud of that moment. It's just that in the life of persons with disabilities, the expectations are so low that the joys are,
yeah,
compounded, multiplied in that sense. So it's,
yeah,
and it's what we call giving them a conducive environment. So they're coming from an environment where they've been told all their life they're a failure, they're up against these barriers, they cannot go to school, they cannot go to, a regular office. And here you've created a business where you're telling them, yes, you can. right?
True.
And
True.
the conducive environment just changes their mindset and they become productive and efficient like no other,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. But as you said, while there are individuals, there are people whom we worked with. There are such beautiful stories that exist there, but there are equally stories of transformation that exist with the clients.
Right.
Because when it comes to the corporate India, um, the fact is, because I have worked there, I understand the complexities of
Absolutely.
working in a corporate environment. I equally understand that it's not easy to change orientation, change your standard operating processes, your defined policies. It's a very
And
difficult thing.
everyone doesn't get the exposure that maybe you and I have got towards disability, right?
Exactly, exactly. And
Hmm.
in fact, that is exactly the reason why perhaps they are very open in being able to ask for help.
Right,
Okay, this is something that we don't know, but we are happy to learn more.
right.
And I think when we see corporates who have managed to move in that direction,
Hmm.
like if I share some examples with you, I think
Right,
one of a very large clients who was a BPO client, who is a BPO client, and there is only a team of persons with vision impairment who is working in that team. And the work is fairly complex because it's complete ticketing, email and call ticketing. And you know that people with vision impairment, they have to use JAWS or NVDA. Especially when it comes to large MNCs and companies, they will never land up using an unlicensed software. They will always use a licensed software, right? I, after working with them for about a year and a half or two,
hmm.
they were so convinced that yes, people with vision impairment can work so well. They now have taken 10 paid JAWS licenses to be able to give people a seamless experience.
And
And now
that's an
they are
expensive screen reader software we are talking about.
Yes. And it is like unbelievable. This is the kind of conversion that we need from people. And
Right,
therefore, you get the confidence that you've managed to touch them in the right way,
right,
right? So, and similarly, there are certain other corporates that we worked with where perhaps they decided, वो बोलते हैं ना, फूक फूक के हम कदम रखना चाहते हैं. So they decided to start the journey with one person, not being very, very sure how will it turn out. But I think when you see the corporates completely convert to be able to stretch their boundaries individually and at the corporate level to create that accommodation such that you're
right,
not setting the person up for failure but to succeed is what gives you the confidence that they are aligning well to the larger vision that
right.
collectively the India Inc. should ideally have with respect to inclusion. Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, there will be a mix. There's a bouquet of your clients. There are some small players, there are some large players, there's people who are strictly following a standard operating procedure. There are people who are more experimental. But by and large, I think what I'm hearing is that you've done well. And these 7 years have been very, 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 wisdom enriching in all
Yeah,
aspects, on the business front, on the
yeah,
disability front.
it's a very complex space. I still remember uh, any time that I would tell initially that this is the space that I'm entering. First, everybody would say, "हाँ NGO चला रही हो," तो उससे वैसे ही disheartened हो जाते थे. But then I think to make a sustainable business practice out of this ourselves is as much importance as it is for every other corporate who wants to get convinced that
Yeah,
hiring PWDs is a business case. And therefore, we have given it all to make it a sustainable business practice, whether it is the BPO that we ran only and solely initially,
right.
or what we are trying to do even today,
Mhm.
because it is a slow process. And I would like to quote my mentor here, Firoz, who always used to say and continues to say that any change takes more than a decade.
Yeah.
And I think I'm glad to be going through that phase right now where the change is so evident. You can see people talking about it. You can see people consciously taking the first step towards it. So
Right.
I'm just very glad that right now we are in that phase where the change is definitely translating into action.
Yeah. We are no longer in a space where the terms inclusion, accessibility, reasonable accommodation, diversity need any introduction before, first When we
Yeah.
first moved in, you needed a context setting for
Yeah.
that. We're past that, and that's progress.
Correct.
Well,
Correct.
thank you very much, Richa, and more power to you and many, many 7 years ahead,
Absolutely.
to the
Thank you
entire
so
team
very
of
much.
Sarathi. Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.